God used the motion of the planets to communicate with us, to announce things to come. Well, many people believe that an astronomical occurrence called 4 blood moons is a message from God. A blood moon is a full lunar eclipse, and 4 of them in a row is called a tetrad. When they've occurred on the Jewish high holy days, it's coincided with major historical events, like the Six-Day War in 1967. 4 blood moons on the Jewish high holy days has happened only 3 times in the last 500 years. The next time it occurs is starting next spring. And I want to go over just a couple of the things that have happened, because it's only happened in 3 times.
3 times in over 500 years.
In 500 years.
And this is confirmed by NASA. This is not something that a religious think tank put together. This is something that you can check on the internet. This is what NASA says has happened, and this is what they say is going to happen.
This is, and we have a full screen up, and it's exactly what I did when I saw your book, because I wanted to verify that these things had happened, and sure enough it was. That's why I wanted to have you on. 4 blood moons have occurred in 1493-94, fall of Spain, the Jews expelled from them, and Columbus discovers America, what the Bible calls it the infant nation.
Right.
1949 to 1950, it follows Israel being declared a nation.
State.
And then a nation state. And then 1967, 68, the Six-Day War. Those are the last 3 times
yes.
that 4 blood moons have occurred. So the next time it occurs actually is starting next spring.
Starts April the 15th, 2014, next spring, and it happens on Passover. The second blood moon next year will be October the 8th on the Feast of Tabernacles. And then in 2015, it will happen again on Passover. And then it will happen the last time, September the 15th, and that will be on the Feast of Tabernacles. The irony of what it takes to get the sun, the earth, and the moon in a perfect alignment to have a blood moon, and then for those blood moons to be on this exact date, is something that just is
just really beautiful cosmological events, or are they tied to biblical prophecy? Today is the first of 4 blood moon eclipses, rare occurrences that some biblical scholars say signal earth-shattering events, particularly when they happen around the Jewish high holy days. And today is the beginning of Passover. So what can this blood moon be telling us?
But in the Bible, in Genesis 1:14, God created the sun and the moon, it says, for signals on basically Passover, on his feast days, his appointed times. So for me, if that's what the Bible says, that we need to be watching when those events happen. Over the last 2,000 years, there's been 62 tetrads, but only 8 times have they occurred on the biblical holidays, and in the last 3 of those, they've had great significance for the nation of Israel. Sure, the last time you had these 4 blood moons on Passover and Tabernacles within a year and a half was 1967 when Israel captured Jerusalem, and the time before that was right after they became a nation in 48. Right before that was in 1493 and 94 during the times of the Spanish Inquisition.
So now this is the first of the blood moons. When will the next one happen on the High Holy Day?
It'll be on the Feast of Tabernacles, I believe October 8th of this year, and then again on Passover next year, and then again on the Feast of Tabernacles in 2015. What's incredible about that one, that's like the grand finale that will be seen in Jerusalem on the Feast of Tabernacles when all the Jews are outside looking up at the sky, and it will be a supermoon. This is going to be a supermoon. The moon will be at perigee, or its closest point to Earth, for the entire year. From the book of Joel, where it talks about the moon turning to blood. It's in the context of God judging the nations that are trying to divide the land of Israel. So for me, I think this could be a heavenly warning sign to Israel not to divide their land, as well as to the nations, that God may judge those who are trying to divide their land, which is exactly what the big push is.
And the 5th angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his great kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds.
Recently, the chief exorcist at the Vatican reported that the devil was in the Vatican.
Morgan. Wolf, Reverend Gabriele Amorth made headlines around the world recently when he said the devil was present in the Vatican.
You're talking about something very real, aren't you?
Certo. Realissima. Dico, se credete al Vangelo, credete all'esistenza del demonio.
Absolutely, very real.
As to the devil's presence in the Vatican, he says that's no surprise. He once had to perform an exorcism on another exorcist.
The first thing we need to do if we're going to find out if the devil is at the Vatican is take a tour underneath the Vatican. As we arrive underneath the Vatican, we see that it is laid out in a number of rooms marked by letters, as we could see in this aerial view map. Now we will be exploring some of the rooms in this map. Let's start off by looking in room C here. As we look into the room, we see that this is a mausoleum of Lucius Tullius Zethus. The Vatican goes on and explains that this room was used for offerings to the dead. We read, "View of the north wall and mosaic floor. In the corners of the mosaic floor there are 8 marble squares with circular holes through which offerings to the dead were poured during the funeral rites carried out in the burial chamber." So here we have a room where offerings are done to the dead. That's pretty common in Catholicism many years. Well, as we move to the next room, we find out why they keep all these idols down there and these images. As we move to room U, here we find the shock of all shocks. Here on the wall, it says there is a depiction of Lucifer, that is, the light bearer, the morning star. On the opposite of the wall, there is a drawing of Vesper, the evening star, cosmic symbol of the human life cycle. We find out that when we get to room U, here we have a clear depiction of Lucifer underneath the Vatican at St. Peter's Basilica. We ask ourselves, why are they keeping this image of Lucifer underneath the Vatican? Again, you would think if you're a Christian church, you would not want to have any of these images. Now we know that they'll go on and say, oh, well, we're saving it because it's a UNESCO heritage site or something like that.
With great pomp, fanfare, and ceremony, Pope Francis, the head of the Jesuit order, announced through his cantor the imminent emergence, the near advent of the coming to light of the Antichrist.
Flammas eius, Lucifer matutinus indeniat, ille in quam Lucifer qui nescito casum, Christus filius tuus, qui regressus ab inferis, humano generis serenus illuxit, et tecum vivit et regnat in saecula saeculorum.
And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared.
What equates to a biblical warning sign, with Turkey completely cutting off the water to the river Euphrates. This is big. This is going to be a monumental disaster, and it's already leaving millions of Syrians without drinking water. This is what world war can spark from right here.
May 31st, 2014. Guys, things seem to be moving at a rapid pace biblically in the Middle East, and let's pay attention to this. And some of you guys may have seen where they are having problems on the Euphrates River, but this is the Tishrun Dam in Syria. Syria has cut this off downstream in order to maintain height. And you're looking at old ruins there, right in the middle of the Euphrates River. Now what's happened is because Syria shut this down, it's shut down to Iraq. Already within 2 days of this report that came out yesterday, they say millions of people are on the verge of not having any water at all. This is a 6-meter drop. This is the dam we're looking at. And they've shut this off to try to preserve water. not intentionally cutting it off from Iraq, but what's happened above Syria, Turkey has cut it off. Now, don't know how the exact, we don't know the details on their water supply. We do know there's political pressure on Syria from Turkey because of what Assad has been doing to his people. We've seen the ruin of Damascus. That's how close we are in prophecy, guys. But what you're not only dealing with water, but electrical power to these people. Now, when you talk about taking people's water, you're talking about a lot of trouble as we look through this area. But again, Turkey's north of Syria. Turkey cut it off. Syria now has cut it off to maintain theirs. But they don't have enough there. They're already in trouble. Reservoirs are already running dry.
And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty.
Out of the Vatican. Listen to this. The senior Vatican scientist said that he would be delighted if we encountered intelligent aliens and would be happy to baptize them. His pronouncement opens up the possibility of space missionaries heading out to the stars to convert aliens.
Did the Vatican find alien life?
You know what? As sensationalistic as that question sounds, it's really not that far off from what we've seen in the news over these last days.
This is, I think, to a lot of people, when you first hear this, say, wow, this is kind of a major breakthrough for the Catholic Church. Is it or isn't it?
Well, let me tell you, these weren't Catholic scientists that came together to support the Catholic Church's vision of something. And that was what was so unique. Here is 30 of the top astrobiologists, physicists, cosmologists, astronomers who are coming and saying, this is what we know about the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligent life form. And together with philosophers and theologians who are listening and saying, what would this mean? If there is extraterrestrial intelligent life form, what would it mean about our understanding of some of the basic principles of the creation of the world, about original sin, the Adam and Eve story, that type of thing.
And what would it mean? Yeah. What are the findings?
Well, you know what? First of all, we haven't found any aliens.
What have you uncovered from records in the Vatican about aliens? I mean, it blows my mind that they're even researching such a subject as this.
Well, the records in the Vatican go back centuries. Actually, I wrote 2 chapters of history concerning the Vatican's interest in extraterrestrials. They have a whole theology developed around what they call the principle of plenitude, meaning anything that God could do, he would do. So they consider the existence of aliens an inevitable consequence of God's omnipotence.
Now, you've actually researched with Vatican astronomers. What did they tell you?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. We even had the opportunity to go to Mount Graham in Arizona, which is where their Vatican Astronomical Technology Telescope, called VAT, where it's at, where the Vatican's astronomers study the deep space. And in the course of doing that, getting permission through the Arizona State University to go there to meet with their astronomers, the Jesuits who are there, we also got access to top astronomers that work in Rome, including an astronomer by the name of Guy Cosmonalgo. He's one of the top astronomers for the Vatican.
What was the major thing you got from your interview with him?
Oh, well, 2 major things. One, he says without apology that very soon the nations of the world are going to look to the aliens for their salvation. Now, when you make a comment like that...
Did you just hear what he said? Does that show you how fast things are moving and how we're really in the last of the last days?
And then, of course, you want to get behind that, right? You want to find out where are they coming from. So he agreed to be interviewed 5 times from Rome, and then gave us documents which are not available to the public that outline what much of the inner thinking of the highest level theologians and astronomers at the Vatican believe now, including the idea that Jesus might be the son of a star child. Now, when we ask him what is a star child, right, they're talking about an alien intelligence from another world, and that the birth of Jesus Christ, the virgin birth, was in fact comparable to an abduction scenario in which these aliens used the Virgin Mary to create Jesus. And this is one of the ways in which they're combining the idea that we are soon to be visited by an alien savior from another world.
There's this great Catholic astronomer, number one, is operating with something called Project Lucifer. What is that?
Well, up on top of Mount Graham in Arizona, there's an observatory complex that consists of 3 very high-powered telescopes. One is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope. There's a radio telescope, and then there's one called the Large Binocular Telescope. This is the most powerful telescope in the world. In fact, they told us they can get better images of space than the Hubble Space Telescope can. Now, attached to this telescope is an infrared camera named Lucifer, which is really a kind of an odd name for a camera. And you know, from the information that we gathered, this
we couldn't explain. We didn't know if it was an angel, a demon, or whatever it was, but it certainly was what people describe as UFOs. And so the phenomenon, to me, is certainly real. Then, of course, you begin defining what it is. Well, to the Vatican and to the astronomers...
But wait a second, it's demonic. Why would the Vatican be studying this?
Yeah, well... Not only are they studying it, Geraldo Balducci, who was the spokesman for the Vatican, he was their official mouthpiece concerning the alien presence, not just the reality of aliens on other worlds, but an alien presence that is here on Earth now. You can go to YouTube and watch his shows on Italian television when he spoke for the church and said that the church was using its embassies around the world to compile information, a case study, if you will, on what the aliens are doing on Earth now. So the belief system is deep, regardless of what you or I might make out of it. And I got to tell you, especially when it comes to alien abduction, I am convinced that we are talking about demonic activity, not intelligences from another world, maybe from another dimension. And they're moving in and out of our reality. They certainly have a conspiratorial plan that might even involve human hybridity. There's a lot to the study. That's why it took us thousands of pages and 6 investigators, and I had to bring a theologian on to make sure that I didn't get off track, right? But what they're saying to us now is it's going to affect Christian belief. There is a professor for the Pope's University in Rome, and he is a very highly respected intellectual. His last name is Tanzaniti, and he has written a paper now in which he is saying that very soon, not right in the beginning, we won't have to deny our Christian faith in the beginning. But there is information coming from another world, and once it is confirmed, it is going to require a rereading of the gospel as we know it. And that's the kind of information that we are receiving from the highest levels of Vatican intelligentsia.
Where's this headed, in your opinion, after all this research?
I think it's headed towards an imminent great deception. I think they either know something or they suspect something, and that's why they're preparing the Catholic faithful. And of course, the Vatican has reached beyond Catholics, but they're trying to prepare the world.
What, based on the prophecies out of the Vatican that were hidden for all these generations, are they anticipating with the final Pope?
Well, the idea among both Catholics and Protestant scholars is that he will be the final Pope. He is the one who is going to be residing over the Vatican as it enters into the Great Tribulation period. And there's also the belief among even some of the Catholic mystics that he might be a false pope, an anti-pope, somebody who helps give rise to the Antichrist.
Certainly. In 2009, the Vatican sponsored an astrobiology conference.
And that means?
That is the study of life in space. Now, what makes that interesting is that we don't really know of any life in space, yet our universities have programs where you can study this. They had the top secular scientists in the world come to Rome for this conference in 2009. We're talking about, atheists, secular scientists, and the sort of topics that they're covering, things like shadow life, exoplanets.
What's an exoplanet?
An exoplanet is a planet that's outside of our solar system.
Okay.
So you have the top scientists in the world gathering in Rome for the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. It's an audience of for the Pope to study life in space.
Tom, tell me about the hybrid humans.
This is one of the things that I didn't even expect would arrive in our study. There is academics who actually believe that there is a hybridity program that is going on right now. And this took me on a kind of a long journey that brought me back to one question, Sid, and that is why in ancient days when the giants, the first original hybrid humans, right, when they were created by fallen angels and were upon the earth, what was their mission, what was their program? It also had to do with hybridity, and it also had to do with misleading and misguiding and even challenging God himself. But notice that the oldest descriptions of those giants, how tall they were, 20 feet, 30 feet. They would be easy to pick up, right? There's a movie out there right now, Jack the Giant Slayer, and it's kind of based on that mythos that exists in every culture around the world. They tell the story. The gods came down, the gods mingled themselves with humans. They took human genetics, animal genetics. They created a hybrid body. Now the question is, down through time, the Bible tells us there were giants in those days and also after that. So now we get past the flood and you have the Og, the king of Bashan. What is he, 12 feet tall? He's certainly not 20 or 30. And it looks to me like there was an intentional breeding down in size of these hybrid humans until today they could possibly be walking among us and we might not even know that we see them. There are academics who actually believe now that they are walking among us, that they're even in government. Now that sounds astonishing. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, right?
It does. In fact, why is Hollywood glamorizing all these things at the same time?
Well, that's exactly right. So is that part of a setup? Are there occultists in Hollywood that have an agenda to try to help prepare humanity for what could be a kind of great deception?
Genesis 6:9 talks about Noah. Explain that.
Our research led us to believe that something that happened in ancient days could be occurring even now as we speak. And when I say ancient days, I'm talking about the days of Noah, a time when all of the ancient records from around the world tell us that very powerful angels came down and they mingled with humans and with animals.
The best record is the Bible. The Nephilim is what he's talking about. Go ahead.
Absolutely, the Nephilim. And it was a period of time in which only Noah, and therefore by extension his children, were found, according to the Old Testament, perfect. When you study why the great flood came, the scripture makes it very clear that it happened because all flesh, both man and beast, had been corrupted. So something was happening in ancient days that had to do with the genetic degradation of God's creation.
What does it mean when it says in the Torah about Noah that he was perfect?
Yes, this is the Hebrew word temyem. Means it's the same phrase that's used to describe an unblemished sacrificial lamb. It's talking about genetics. It's talking about his DNA had not been corrupted, as evidently the rest of the world had been by that time. So there was a saturation, an intermarriage between angels and humans, and then through intermarriage this was spreading over hundreds of years until finally, by the time we reach Noah, he's the last specimen left that has a genetic makeup, his DNA, as God had made it. And therefore, you understand why God has to send this flood to wipe out all of this contaminated forms of life and sent this judgment in the days of Noah. Now, Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah.
Oh, yes. Tell me this. In the parable of the wheat and the tares, the weeds, the wheat and the weeds, the Messiah said, let them grow up together. Don't pull them out. I'm wondering if that's the difference between those whose DNA has not been corrupted and those whose DNA has been corrupted, perhaps through a hybridization process of these aliens. What do you think?
You know, Sid, behind the scenes right now, this question is unfolding among academics in a way that you can't even possibly imagine, where they're asking the question, have we concluded that hybrids are among us? And if hybrids are among us, can they even be saved? This is a complex question that's being raised by theologians right now. Isn't that an astonishing thing?
What's even more astonishing to me is the Vatican's secret plan for welcoming in an alien God with a small g. But there are secret plans for welcoming. The Vatican will welcome in this alien from another planet as God. Tell me about that.
Well, Sid, you know, when you look at Bible prophecy and it talks about a one world government and a one world religion, you know, you see how divided the world still is. And, you know, we have to think that something unprecedented is going to occur that would unite the world under one heading like that. Now, Ronald Reagan gave a speech to the United Nations where he said how quickly our differences would be resolved if we were faced with an alien threat from outside this world. I mean, this is in the 80s. He gave this speech in the UN. Now, if you look around the world, what people believe, I mean, statistics in the United States say around 50% of Americans already think that UFOs are aliens visiting the Earth. Now, there was a recent poll in the United Kingdom. More people believe in extraterrestrials in the UK than God, okay? And that's a fact. And so to me, the strong delusion is already here. The groundwork has been laid. And our hypothesis is these powers and principalities that Paul writes about in Ephesians 6, these demonic forces have seeded this idea into the world, so we are primed and ready for a deception.
Okay, but what makes you think the Vatican has planned to announce this?
Well, you know, they're having astrobiology conferences. They've made it intellectually virtuous to believe in these extraterrestrials. Their writings coming out of their theologians have pretty much made the argument that if you don't believe in extraterrestrials, then that is actually the heresy.
You talk about that the Vatican is going to reevaluate their position on basic Christianity. What do you mean by that?
Well, their theologians have written that they think that these entities will be evangelizing us, that they think the chances are that they're not fallen and we are, so that we would have to modify our beliefs according to their revelation.
So are they talking about setting up teams to evangelize humans and aliens? Is that what you're really talking about?
Well, if you get on the internet right now, you'll find
and baptize them?
Hundreds of articles from the Vatican astronomers talking about baptizing extraterrestrials.
Again, what Vatican experts have told us, when Father Malachi Martin was asked, why do they have a presence on Mount Graham? And one of the things we haven't had time to talk about is Mount Graham is sacred to the Apache. It is a stargate through which they've, for centuries, have seen creatures that come, that move back and forth.
Now, this is right in Arizona.
This is in Arizona. And in fact, their creation mythos is that a disc came down and a bearded guy in the disc, who was the father of creation, was what established Mount Graham as a holy mountain. Well, anyway, when Malachi Martin was asked, why is the Vatican on Mount Graham? What are they doing up there? He said that they're using their telescope to watch something. And when he was pressed on the question, he said it's because at the highest levels of the Vatican governance, they know what is approaching the earth, and it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. They're literally watching something with the Lucifer device that is approaching planet Earth now.
And what do you believe they're looking for?
I think that they could be deceived. I think they're watching something and they think it's one thing, and I think it's something else. Lucifer, I think it's Satan. I think Jesus said, I beheld Satan as lightning falling from heaven. He has to do with the power of the air. And of course, you know, when Pope Benedict stepped down not long ago, twice lightning struck the top of the St. Peter's Basilica. And this goes back to their belief system in Romanism.
And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty.
Down. All right, that's a UFO if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, could you identify
That's undeniable.
The airport had to be shut down after people apparently saw twinkling lights above the airport terminal. 17 flights had to be diverted. The latest sighting happened just 2 days ago, and people say they saw 4 lantern-like objects forming a diamond shape in the air, hovering in the sky for over an hour. And aviation experts say they don't know what it was. It wasn't a plane.
Plus, what was in the skies over Jerusalem? And why did it stop over one of the most treasured sites in Christianity?
We've seen them in Mississippi like this, but never like
Well, if you surf around online today, and it probably will not be long before you come across footage of a UFO in the skies over Jerusalem. Now it is sparking intense debate on the internet. Trace Gallagher following this live from our West Coast Newsroom. So the question is, what was that UFO? What was it doing over Jerusalem? And, you know, is he back?
Yeah, and that is the question, by the way, Megan, because, you know, critics, it's difficult for them to dismiss this because there are so many different angles. We've got 4 different videos, all from various perspectives, showing this light above the Dome on the Rock. In Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, of course, we know, which is a holy site for both Jews and Muslims. You see the shining ball of light, right? It's above there. It's kind of, well, they just froze it and I really can't see it now. But there it is right there. It's at the top of the screen. Yeah. It's up there and it hovers, kind of a pulsating orb. And then hold on here because this thing starts going down right toward, you see it there, going down toward the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount. And then it stops and it hovers there for a while. It kind of sits there, and then all of a sudden it shoots straight back up into the air. Whoa. Now, experts say this would be kind of an indication this is an unmanned. There it is. You saw it right there. It shot straight back up in the air. Yeah. It's kind of hard to see, but it shot up in the air, and the experts think that, you know, it's an unmanned vehicle, they believe. It could be a drone, but they do not know of anything like this in the Israeli army.
Because what is coming, this coming great deception, hinges on Darwinism. Darwinism tells us that there is no God, that we just evolved over billions of years. When Ben Stein sits down with Richard Dawkins, one of the premier evolutionists of the 20th and 21st centuries, and says, where did life come from? He says, Dawkins says, well, maybe millions of years ago in another galaxy, a race of highly evolved aliens created us and then seeded us here through the galaxy. That's what he believes. I call that the alien gospel. This is what's coming, and it dovetails into Darwinism. Scientists and the masses, when they show up, the coming great deception, and they will show up, they will have 2 things for us. Free energy, which pilots the crafts, and the second thing is they'll have this DNA upgrade. And if a person takes this DNA upgrade, his DNA will become altered. Yes, he will have no diseases for 500 years or more. Yes, he or she will live and all this. But the problem is you are no longer human. You become Nephilim, and that's why the judgment in the book of Revelation is exactly the same as Genesis 6. There's a correlation between the two.
Now tell me about that recent press conference of the UFOs.
That was in Washington, D.C. Senators, congressmen, governors, Air Force pilots, people with top secret clearances all came on the record basically stating that the UFO phenomena is real, it's burgeoning, it's not going to go away. It's increasing in numbers. This is the coming great deception. What event can change everyone's worldview in a second? You see a mile-wide craft over your city. Unless you know what you're looking at, you will be deceived. And Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible.